Hello and a very warm welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Bangladeshi counterpart Sheikh Hasina held bilateral talks last week and inked 22 pacts in various key sectors, including a civil nuclear agreement and 2 memorandums of understanding on defense cooperation. India has extended a credit line of $4.5 billion for implementation of projects in Bangladesh. The Prime Minister also announced $500 million credit line towards our eastern nation's military budget. The Prime Minister also said both sides agreed that peace and security will remain central engagement between the two neighbours. However, West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee's proposal for sharing waters of 5 other rivers flowing from the northern part of the state into Bangladesh instead of Teesta found no takers. On this edition of The Big Picture, we'll take a look at the hits and misses of the Bangladesh Prime Minister's visit to India. Joining me on the program today are Professor S.D. Muni, Foreign Affairs expert, Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, Smruti S. Pattanaik, Research Fellow, IDSA, and Raghubansh, Sinha, Deputy News Editor, Hindustan Times. Thank you so much for joining me on the program. To all my guests. Ambassador, I'd like to begin with you. What were the key takeaways, do you believe, of this visit?
Several significant developments. I think one, in terms of the, if one looks at the broad picture, it was a fraternal relationship. That is how it was addressed as. And the Foreign Secretary, when he was talking about the relationship, he said it's a very unique relationship. The Prime Minister, in his own statement, he called it the Shonali Adhyay, the golden period of our relationship. So I think in the broad framework, a very, very significant push to the bilateral partnership. But if we were to go into some of the specifics, the $5 billion line of credit that has been extended, $4.5 billion
yes,
for major projects and $500 million for defense. I think that is the highest that has been given to any country. Overall, it makes it about $8 billion over the last 6 years or so, which is a very significant extension of credit. In terms of defense, there are a number of agreements that have been signed. And going forward, this is not only in terms of acquisition, but also in terms of training, in terms of working together, interoperability, etc. Then in the area of nuclear cooperation, there's a framework agreement, and there are 2 other agreements between the agencies. Space exploration, in the area of connectivity, I think that is very, very important, because connectivity has ramifications and repercussions for a large number of segments, whether it is trade, whether it is creating job, employment. When we talk about illegal migration, I think that also tends to get controlled and curtailed by that. So connectivity is energy. Energy, we had already agreed that there would be 600 megawatt of supply of power. There is a provision for another 60 megawatt. There was also, in terms of connectivity, both bus and rail connectivity, and also rakes of diesel oil being supplied from here. So I think the gamut is very huge, even at the business level. The business meetings that were held today, a very large, powerful business delegation accompanied Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. So today also about 13 agreements were signed. This is in addition to the 22 agreements that were signed on Saturday. So in all, it is 35 agreements.
Indeed.
And business agreements were $9 billion. So that itself is significant. So if we look at the joint statement that came out, 65 paragraphs, a very comprehensive. Terrorism was another aspect. That is an area where both the countries have been cooperating, have been collaborating very extensively. And I think both sides have got satisfaction from that. So a large number of areas in which we have moved forward. We have seen what was done during the last visit of the Prime Minister in 2015 when he went there. Most of the projects that had been identified, there has been forward movement. For these $4.5 billion, identification of projects has already started happening. Sure. In terms of infrastructure, in terms of airport upgradation, in terms of port development. So across the board. And I think this, the personal rapport between the two leaders was also reflected, was Indeed. Also evident throughout the visit.
Indeed, fair enough. Raghubansh Sinha, You know, as far as some of the misses are concerned, we'll get to TISA ahead in the program because that's something that we need to concentrate on. But, you know, were there any opportunities missed during this visit?
Well, I think certainly there was, great expectation that some kind of movement would be made on this. Certainly, the indications that were coming from the West Bengal Chief Minister, Mamata Banerjee, when she said that there is no water in TISTA, it was clear that no major breakthrough is going to be, seen during this visit. But the kind of statement that we are seeing from our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he is saying, indicating that both of us, meaning that Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister, and he himself, will see to it that there is some movement. So, the fact that it has taken so long, that it is a matter of emotional issue in Bangladesh, it has become an issue of politics in India. This is a very difficult thing. So certainly it's going to be, time consuming, time taking, because after all, there is no point in, hurrying up and concluding a treaty which will become a political football in the politics of West Bengal. So it's better to, delay the thing and find a consensus than to hurry up and, stitch together a treaty which may not have many takers.
Indeed, fair enough. Professor, since we're talking about TISA now, let's get it out of the way and talk about it constructively as well. Do you believe that the TISA agreement is something that might not be signed anytime in the near future till Mamata Banerjee probably is in power, because it's a highly political issue considering looking at both West Bengal and Bangladesh?
See, looks like that, but I have a very different opinion on this. You cannot let vital national interests suffer either because of your provincial or state politics or because of federal tensions. And I think these two factors and issues are eating up into Indo-Bangladesh relations and with many other neighbors also. For the last 5 to 6 years, the TISTA issue was almost clinched and done
in 2011
under Dr. Manmohan Singh in 11 or 12, and it's hanging fire, and that shows a lack of political will. And I tell you, I should be very honest that behind the federal relations are the specific political stakes of the parties concerned. And unless you can set them aside for the vital national interest, because you are dealing with a neighbor which Bangladesh at today is one of the best in terms of relations with India today as compared to all other neighbors. And if you can't make these little adjustments and compromises inside. Now, Prime Minister Modi, I think with his goodwill and probably sincerity, has said that we will, me and Hasina ji would sign this agreement. How would you sign this agreement? Either you are assuming that she comes back and then therefore in her second term, if this is an indication, this is not going to do very well to Hasina in her own politics, number one. Number two, if you want to sign before that, why not now? And try and make adjustments and compromises with Mamata Didi. I may also mention that Hasina has been very bravely taking this aspect. And I think this morning itself, I was present at a meeting where she spoke. And she said, the government of India and all political parties are willing to sign it, but Didi Moni, what she does, let us see. So she knows where the obstacle is, and this is not very, credible, either for Mamata's politics internally or for the image of India as a nation.
Fair enough. Smruti Pattanaik, the proposal put forth by Mamata Banerjee of, sharing the water of 5 other rivers. Now, that particular proposal does not seem to have any takers as such. Why is it so? Is it a problem in that, or is it not possible? What's the issue really?
I think probably, she wanted not to take up the TISTA because the entire focus was on TISTA, because everybody was looking at her and it was seen that she is the stumbling block, in the India-Bangladesh relations. And probably, my guess is that probably, to get out of being seen as a villain in India-Bangladesh relations, she proposed probably, there are 54 rivers between India and Bangladesh. So probably she thought, it is better to offer and say that there are 5 rivers which are flowing from West Bengal to Bangladesh. Those can be shared. But the issue is not of, sharing 5 rivers. The issue is of Tista. And this is one of the major bone of contention between India and Bangladesh. And as Professor Muni was also mentioning that for the better national interest, I think this issue particularly needs the attention of both the center and state. The problem here is that there is no forward movement on this, what exactly West Bengal wants from the Tista, what is, in terms of stake when you arrive at a kind of bilateral kind of treaty. So what is that West Bengal government wants? Nobody knows. So the thing is that she is, I would say, stalling any agreement on Tista rather than saying that what actually is West Bengal's stake and how would she like to move forward with the agreement. If not 50-50, then what is the proportion of sharing? So I think it is a kind of, as was mentioned, it's a politics between the center and state. I think the two sides, at least to show their sincerity, especially the center and the state, need to get ahead with the negotiation. Like for example, the Kalyan Rudra committee. Nobody knows what does the report say. It's not made public. So can that be made public to know that what actually is West Bengal's stake in the Tista agreement and how West Bengal is going to suffer? I'm sure the government of India will not like to have any kind of agreement where the interest of the West Bengal government, West Bengal people is not taken care of.
Fair enough.
So therefore, I think, it is better to work on the nitty-gritty of the West Bengal's demand than, just putting the issue aside by saying that, there are 5 more rivers which can be shared between India and Bangladesh, which I feel is not actually a fair kind of solution to the Tista issue.
Fair enough. Professor, you wanted to make a point,
No,
but also, with the current political scenario and all that's happened between the center and the state of West Bengal, how can you expect them to cooperate?
No, this is precisely what I'd say. It's not the issue that nobody knows what is bugging West Bengal on this issue. There is one set of issues which are stated, another set of issues which are not stated. The stated issue is that there is not enough water in Tista, or North Bengal would suffer if we give more water to Tista. Unstated is consolidation of North Bengal constituencies for the ruling party in West Bengal, and the question of taking more money from the center by West Bengal as a state or chief minister. Now, this is an argument which Mamta Didi was making even with Pranab Mukherjee or the previous government. And actually on this agreement or this issue, something could not gel out, and therefore she walked out. This is an unstated issue. And I think if these are the internal issues, this is for us, all of us, both the center and the state, to sit down and say, look, let us have our scores settled in other areas rather than an area which is a very sensitive one in terms of India-Bangladesh relationship.
Ambassador, make your point as well, and a question to you as well.
Yeah.
Is Sheikh Hasina going to receive a lot of flack now from the Bangladeshi media and the opposition when she goes back?
Okay, so let me first come to the issue that we were discussing as far as Tista is concerned. When we are speaking about the interests of the people of West Bengal, I think we really have to look at it in absolute terms and in relative terms. Very quickly, just to give you an example, I remember many years ago when I used to be at the Ministry of Commerce, and there was a trade fair that was being organized, and there we had imported about Jamdani saris and carpets worth 6 lakhs of rupees. Mr. Priyaranjan Das Munshi at that time used to be the Minister of State for Commerce. Now, after the trade fair, that was supposed to be sold out in the open market. But the weavers of West Bengal said, no, this is handicraft item. This is going to have a very adverse impact on our livelihood. Now, in a country so large, 6 lakh rupees of Jamdani saris, what is the sort of impact that it is going to have on the livelihood? So I think in terms of the relative impact on the people, that we need to understand. You see, the whole issue, the whole bilateral relationship today, as I see it, has been hijacked by this one single issue. I remember when I used to be in Dhaka, at that time it used to be Ganga waters, the Farakka barrage and all that. after 1996, when we had the Ganges Water Treaty, the treaty has been working very well, and everyone has forgotten about it. But at that time it was said that once Ganga is done, then there'll be 53 other rivers, which is fair enough. And I think we have to share, and India has always behaved in a very generous way with its the lower riparians. So I think we really need to put this together. I am quite sanguine that we will be able to move forward, and I applaud and commend the courage and the forthrightness of the Prime Minister when he said that we'll be able to do it, and it's my government which will be able to do it. Because after all, he was able to do the LBA, he was able to do the land boundary agreement after 40 years, when for 40 years none of the governments, even those which had 3/4 majority in the Lok Sabha, were able to do it in the mid-80s. And he was able to get Mamta Didi on board, he was able to get all the other neighboring states of Bangladesh on board. So I am quite sanguine that on this also he will be. And Mamta Banerjee was here, she took part in the bus and the rail sort of movement between Khulna and Kolkata and all that sort of things. She was at the lunch, she was at the dinner. So I do see that national interest will trump over the the parochial state interest. Coming to the question that you posed as to whether she is going to receive a lot of flack, I think the opposition, whether it is Bangladesh National Party or Jamaat, they are priming themselves up. That is what they had said, that if there is no Tista, then what is the point it is going to be. So I think she was quite prepared. She would have been quite prepared that this is what the opposition is going to say. But then what the other elements of the agreements that have been signed, for instance, the $5 billion, the energy, the nuclear energy, maybe not the defense so much, because, obviously some elements, some sections in Bangladesh would not be very happy that there is a closer defense partnership between India and Bangladesh. But I think across the board, and in terms of collaboration on training, on human resource development, infrastructure development, I think she has many things, and we have seen over the past...
So that's going to overshadow what's happened with Tista, is what you're saying. Fair enough.
So,
Fair enough. Raghubansh, as far as there are crucial elections in 2018, both in Bangladesh that Sheikh Hasina has to face, as well as in West Bengal, where Mamta Banerjee is gearing up for the Panchayat polls. Do you believe the Tista water agreement, this particular issue is going to have any bearings on these polls?
Well, of course, in India, Mamta Banerjee, if she is excluded from any such talk, she will make a big issue out of it. But in Bangladesh, I think that we are underestimating the ability of Sheikh Hasina, to overcome this issue. I think she is a very popular leader, and if you look at the political scene in Bangladesh, the opposition parties are on the back foot. So, trying to overplay this whole Tista issue to say that, it will be, she will not be able to manage the opposition there. We should not, overread this thing. That is one point. And the second point is that, I think the Bangladesh-India relationship is a multi-sectoral relationship today. Perhaps it is the best in the last 40 years. It involves so many different, from space, science, technology, defense. And so I think the focus should not be taken away from, so many fields of close relationship with, people-to-people contact and science and technology. And the whole focus trying to bring it to Tista as a zero-sum game, I think it is, we are trying to, diminish the relationship between the two neighbors.
Fair enough. Smruti Pattanaik, a lot has been said by the ambassador about the defense, and the defense sector, and how India has extended $500 million to that sector as well. Is it also because of what happened in November when China delivered 2 submarines to Bangladesh, and there was a lot of stir up here in the Indian defense community? Is this all as a result of that?
I would not say, yes, to some extent it could be, a reaction, but I would not say that the entire thing is just completely a reaction to what the China has been doing in Bangladesh. The reason for saying so is that, for example, since he came to power in 2008 December, there has been significant cooperation between India and Bangladesh, and some of this cooperation also started after 2007 when the military-backed caretaker government was in power. Like for example, the joint anti-terror exercises, the 7th round which was just recently held, goes back to 2009 if I am not mistaken. So therefore, to say that the entire reaction of 500 million which was given to the defense sector is just because of China, because for example, there has been also a lot of cooperation between India and Bangladesh in terms of dealing with terrorism. There is intelligence sharing between the two countries, there is joint exercises, as I said, there has been substantial training of officers between the two military academies which is going for the past nearly 7 years or more than that. And there is also at the same time a very significant high level visit, defense visit, like for example, when in 2007 the then army chief of Bangladesh visited India, that visit was taking place nearly after 10 to 11 years. So therefore, I would say that it is a progression of cooperation which actually happened between India and Bangladesh since 2009. It is a progression which has culminated in this defense cooperation agreement. So it is not necessarily that submarine has been delivered, because like for example, this particular defense agreement between Bangladesh and China was signed in 2002. So why in 2016, it was part of that particular deal, as some of the analysts has mentioned in Bangladesh. So why is it that in 2016 you react to a particular thing like the delivery of submarine? Because after all, Bangladesh has been getting its defense weapons from China, which I don't think is new. So
Sure.
therefore, I think it should be seen in larger picture. Yes, the presence of the submarine per se may not be a threat, but the training which the access which Chinese will have in terms of training by using the submarine to the Bangladeshi officials, and thereby mapping the floor of the ocean in the Bay of Bengal probably is much more significant threat in terms of maritime security rather than the presence of submarine itself.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yes, Ambassador, is China clearly is a threat in the Indian Ocean region as well as in the West. We've seen with the CPEC and other developments there. But is China a threat to India even in the East?
China is definitely a factor. I will not say a threat. Maybe threat will be too strong a word at this stage. China is definitely a factor, and even as since we are talking about Bangladesh, it might have been one of the factors, but I think there is an intrinsic strength in and there's an intrinsic logic in the relationship. And if one were to look at the 4 or 5 defense agreements that have been signed, leaving aside the $500 million line of credit, what we will see is that basically it is an attempt to bring it under some sort of a framework, all the cooperation that has already been going on, that has already existed. And actually Bangladesh, in a manner of speaking, has been an outlier, because with all the other countries also in our neighborhood, whether it is Afghanistan, whether it is Sri Lanka, Nepal, etc., Bhutan, there have been framework agreements. So here in Bangladesh, where again it has been said it is the best relationship in the neighborhood first policy, I think we see the fruition of that policy in our relations with Bangladesh. So to put the defense partnership under some sort of a discipline, under some sort of a rubric, I think that is what the attempt is here. So China is in that sense not a factor per se, but I think it will help us also to regulate and see what is happening. As far as the East is concerned, what you mentioned, of course, East extends, you can go eastwards, you can speak about the South China Sea, what is happening there, you can speak about the Pacific.
Sure.
That of course our interests are there, and we have had vision statements when President Obama had come here in January 2015 and otherwise. So that is a matter of concern as far as the increasing assertiveness of China is concerned. But in our neighborhood, what is being termed as the string of pearls, and here trying to, Gwadar is one, Hambantota is another one, and here to see Bangladesh also slowly and gradually in that sense veering towards it, that is a matter of concern, but I think we have our own intrinsic strengths to build upon.
Fair enough. Professor, from a strategic point of view, how important and how crucial is Bangladesh for us?
No, it is very important, but let me cover a couple of other points. First, when whatever I said on Teesta, since we were discussing Teesta, the impression should not go around that for me that is the be all and everything. That was not the idea, number one. Number two, defense agreement should not be seen, as Ambassador has said, only in the context of China. Mind it, the Bangladeshis, since their military regimes, have been having cooperation with China for last more than 30 years. And the Chinese have consolidated and a huge influence, so much so that some of the military regimes have been building upon an hypothesis that they have India as an adversary. I think this defense agreement seriously dents that hypothesis, and this is where it has its most significant, because 500 million for defense purchases is not a big deal. Look at it, I mean 4.5 billion for developmental purposes and 0.5, 1/9 of that. So that's not the major issue. Thirdly, India is having defense and security cooperation with all its neighbors. Sri Lanka, Maldives, we have had maritime cooperation with Myanmar, we have had on security and other issues. Nepal is an old story. Afghanistan again. Even beyond Maldives, we are going to island countries to see that, and make sure that Bangladesh refused China for the deep sea port in Chittagong,
yes,
which has had defense implications. Therefore, look at into the perspective. China is a factor, but not the only factor.
Fair enough.
And I think the advantage of the defense agreement is that it really shakes up the old foundations of the entire strategic psyche, which has been built and ingrained into some of the Bangladeshi establishments by the old military regimes, which is now fading slowly, but this is a very firm sign that now we are turning the page.
Indeed. Raghubansh, I'm sorry, I beg your pardon, but as far as the way forward is concerned, are India and Bangladesh going to be all-weather friends, or do you believe that there's going to be a hiccup somewhere down the line?
Well, I think, as I mentioned earlier, this phase is perhaps the best we have had in the last 40 years. And there is immense potential for this relationship to grow and become very, very deep-seated. The only point is that, we have to move away from this obsession with one or two issues. Now, we all know Teesta is an emotional issue in Bangladesh. It has become a political issue in West Bengal. And so there will be some problem. But if you look at the relationship, it has immense potential. And number 2 point that I would like to make is, China is, Chinese activities in and around this area is a matter of concern. But, we don't have to compete with China on their own rules and regulation. Our relationship with Bangladesh is very different from the Chinese relationship. The defense relationship between Bangladesh and China is, decades old. They have been the largest suppliers for decades. So, we don't have to compete with them only on defense thing. Our people-to-people contact, our goodwill, our historic relationship, and the way the people and the leaders of the two countries look at each other. And, I would like to remind you the way, the way they are linking our contribution to the 1971 liberation struggle and so on and so forth. These are soft power that we have to, which has the ability to take the relationship on a new height.
Right, fair enough. Quick closing comment from you, Smruti Pattanaik, because I'm completely out of time. Your concluding remarks.
Just to say that, this is a very broad-based relationship, and Bangladesh, I don't think India is a prominent factor in Bangladesh domestic politics at present. One or two issues can be taken up, like for example, the BNP's reaction to Hasina's visit was selling the sovereignty, and that is not something which is new, which she has been saying for the past many years. I think Hasina is going to fight the next election on the domestic issues, not on the India-Bangladesh issue. So I think it has already reached a stable foundation, and I see that, irrespective of who comes to power in Bangladesh, the thing is that, the relationship has reached such a height, I think that it is going to continue and prosper much more in the
Okay,
future.
all right. On that note, then I'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Professor S.T. Muni, Ashok Sajjanhar, Smruti Pattanaik and Raghubansh, thank you so much for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's all the time we have. Thank you so much for watching. See you again next time.